everyone. Welcome to another episode of Talking Art in Maine. I'm your host, Emily Sabino. I'm an abstract representational painter living in Newcastle. And tonight I have the pleasure of introducing you to esteemed painter Maureen Egan. Just a few announcements before we begin. I want to give a shout out to our 4 very generous local sponsors, and so please consider supporting them. They are Damariscotta Hardware, Hammond Lumber Company, the Knickerbocker Group, and Damariscotta River Grill. Yep. Thank you. Now, some of you may have noticed Maureen's artwork in the theater lobby. So at the conclusion of the talk, if you want to check that out, there's something special about seeing work live. So feel free to do that. And we are going to have some time at the end for Q&A. So if you've got questions, you can write them down or type them into your, thumb them into your phone. And then we'll get to as many as we can in the Q&A. So now I'd like to introduce you all to Maureen. Maureen Egan's reverent and heartfelt paintings act as visual talismans, expressing a healing connection with and appreciation of life lessons, cycles of life, and the awe-inspiring beauty of the natural world. Egan is at heart a storyteller where reality and the imaginal worlds are often combined. Her deft use of color and archetypal imagery create resonant images that spark an uplifting inner response. Always looking to explore theme, Egan has extolled the magnificence of the Wind River Mountains in Wyoming, and we'll see some of those images tonight. She's created visualizations of energy centers within the body. She's depicted her own healing journey through breast cancer in the celebrated autobiographical book, The Light from Here, which was published in 2016. And she'll have some copies after the talk to sell, and any proceeds go to the theater, just a donation. And finally, she's paid homage to the natural beauty of her chosen home state of Maine. So for the past 18 years, Egan has shown her work in solo and group exhibitions across the state of Maine. And prior to her painting career, she was actually an illustrator at Down East magazine. And she says, "My artistic practice has taught me that an image, and especially color and light, can truly help a person feel a comforting or empowering shift. Initially, that person is me, and I often turn to imagery when I am lost or troubled by a situation. When creating a scene, I listen to the painting, allowing it to evolve and guide me into the feelings that I may or may not have words for, but which are safely expressed and lifted into the beauty of the colors and forms that manifest on the canvas." Maureen Egan, welcome to Talking Art in Maine. So we're going to start with a video that Maureen created a few years ago about her work.
Before beginning a painting, I prepare to take a journey, one that will blur the real with the imagined. I start with a sense of the story I want to tell, then gather images that resonate. Along with the paint, I layer ideas, memories, imagery, and most of all, color. I focus my attention and feeling, responding intuitively as I proceed. The work and I form a kind of relationship, and if I listen well, it returns more than I give. My life and my art took a turn a few years ago, precipitated by my first ever hike in Wyoming's wilderness. The trip brought intense emotional extremes that, once home, still hummed. But with distance came perspective. Bringing difficult scenes into focus allowed me to recast them in a kinder light. Turning an angst-filled night into a scene like this was like having a superpower that let me find beauty in the darkest place. And here, on our last morning, when I stood stroking my wounds, then vowed to put my sincerest effort forward. Some of the Wyoming paintings came straight from photographs we took on the trip, which was a return for me to a more representational style. In these cases, I learned new painting techniques around form, perspective, and color. I got a lot of practice painting mountains. I love to layer colors into a harmonious whole, including subtle, unexpected shades. And most of all, I'm a storyteller, utilizing all the artist's tools to make an image that sparks an inner response. To recognize that radiant, peaceful resonance that rises when we take time to cultivate it. After 2 trips and 2 years of painting the Wyoming wilderness, I felt drawn to explore a new medium. With my husband, I spent last year making a film about our 2019 journey into the Wind River Range. And now I'm back in the studio, creating colorful new stories, which I look forward to sharing in person next year.
That very calming video is actually on YouTube. So if you Google Maureen Egan, you can watch it again, because I know I watched it several times. It's wonderful to watch. So thank you for making that. So let's move on to some paintings that are actually in the video. So let's see here. Here we go. This one is called Invincible Summer. It's 16 by 20 inches, and it's in the lobby right now when you go out afterwards if you want to see it. And you'd mentioned in the video that we just watched that before you begin a new painting, you prepare to take a journey. Can you talk a bit more about that process of beginning a new painting?
Yeah, it's helpful to have watched that. That was made probably 4 years ago for a virtual show. So my process, I'm going to answer that the way I do it now because it changes over time. Mm-hmm. So my theme for last year and this year coming up is painting Maine. And so what I've been doing is taking short trips, like weekend trips to various parts. Like I went up to Baxter this summer, and I've loved going up to Washington County. So I take a lot of photographs. I actually was a photographer before I started painting. So taking a lot of photographs. My husband's also a photographer. We met at the Maine photographic workshops a long time ago. So I take a lot of photographs, and then if I see other people's paintings or at a museum, you're taking pictures of, sometimes you're allowed to take pictures of paintings in museums. So I'm collecting things that just make me happy. And then when the time comes to start, I have a painting season. So I only paint from early November until the end of April. And it's kind of one of my techniques of getting through the long Maine winters. So I've developed the theme. I know I'm getting ready. In fact, it's happening right now because November is coming very soon. So I kind of decide maybe the first image I'm going to work with, and I've got a bunch of photographs. And I'm not much of a sketcher, so I just go in on my first studio morning, and I just I use acrylics, so I just water the paint down so that it's very easy to go over. And the first day that I'm working on a painting, I'm just very gently, lightly blocking it out and stepping away a lot and just kind of sensing where it wants to go. And I also work, so I only have 4 mornings a week in the studio, so a total of 8 hours a week on a good week. So I have a lot of time where I'm not in the studio, and some of that is like the evening when you wouldn't really want to paint because it's too dark, but I can go and look at the painting or bring it into my bedroom. So I'm able to just let it pull me forward, but it starts with mostly photographs that I've taken or that somebody else has taken.
And how come you only paint between November and April?
Well, I would say the main reason for that is that that's shifting these days, but I've been a gardener. We have very extensive gardens, and so it's just a time constraint more than anything. I'm moving away from the gardening, the intensive gardening, as I age and my back, and you know how it goes. So we'll see. I don't know if I can't imagine having the time in the summer. It's such a busy time. So.
Yeah.
And I because of the way I work going in, winter just fits to me.
Right, right. And so was this particular painting created from a photograph, this one?
Yes, so my husband and I camp a lot, or not a lot, but some. And there's a wonderful preserve in Washington County called the Cutler Gold Coast Preserve. So we've probably camped there, 4 or 5 times. And so I had photographs of this spot. A lot of people that have been up there will recognize that area or that actual spot. So, so I had some photographs, but I was probably scrolling through Facebook or something, and I saw somebody had been up there, and they took a picture with that cloud. I've never seen a cloud like that. Mm-hmm. To me, it's the cloud doing a happy dance. So I just knew that I wanted to paint it. And so I used that cloud from that photograph, and then I had other ones. And you can kind of tweak things so that it looks good. I love the gestural quality of the tree on the left. There's a lot of dancing going on in that painting, really.
Agreed. Okay, let's move on to this beautiful painting called Carabasset Stream. This is also in the lobby, and this is a 20 by 20. So in looking at your work, I've noticed that many of your paintings have pathways and fallen logs. So I'm wondering if there's a significance to these things, or are they more a compositional counterbalance to the vertical trees?
Yes, well, the pathways are definitely symbolic. Because I feel like I'm taking a journey to make the painting, it just seems that there wants to be a path there. Also for visual reasons. When you're making a painting, I learned this early on, you want the eye to keep moving through the painting. So remember, I'm working from photographs, so of course anytime you take a picture of the Maine woods, there are going to be many fallen logs, many more than I put in my paintings. But I'll pick the one that I like best, and I point it in a way so that it's going to lead the eye up, kind of up, and then maybe there's a branch that leads it back, so you just want to keep the eye, you don't want the eye to leave the painting, you want it to come back and circle around. So, both reasons.
That's very interesting. I have another question in a completely different area. The traditional desired route for artists has been to be in a gallery, and you have taken a different approach, focusing on making your works more accessible. And you have an interesting saying, which is, when the painting finds its owner, a match is made. Can you tell us a bit more about your approach to sharing and selling your work?
Yes, well, I feel like a lot of what anybody does in any part of their life, especially with creative work, everything is a bit of a self-portrait. And so I've done a lot of work with people. I help, one of my jobs is I help elderly ladies. And so that I have this real social need. And I've worked for 10 years at the Waldorf School in Rockport as the enrollment and marketing director. So I've just done a lot of that kind of work. And so it's just very natural for me to want to share with everybody. So I have a little present for everybody today that comes, So I just want to send everybody home with an image. I mean, I know that I should care more about making money, but it's just not who I am. So it's evolved. I also was fortunate enough to marry somebody who became a graphic designer. So I am able to get all these wonderful things done for free. Maybe some chocolate here and there, but so that has allowed me then, and often it's his ideas. So when I'm planning a show, I use places where, like the Zoot Coffee Shop in Camden, they don't take any money when the paintings sell. So I can lower the price of the painting, because if you're in a gallery, they take 40% or more. So generally, and so Tim will choose the images that we like the best from the show, and he'll make maybe 6 cards, and we have a little packet that they can also buy, and just making it so that everybody can participate. And in the last couple of years, I have a booth at the Belfast Indoor Farmers Market, and that has been the best possible experience that I've had, because all types of people will stop. I have a booth with kind of stairs that come down with maybe 40 different cards, and 6-year-olds, 80-year-olds, men, women, all kinds of people will stop, and they just stand there, and I'm kind of hiding behind, so they don't necessarily see me right away. And I can kind of watch them, and they're just like this big smile, or holding their hand on their heart, or just staring for sometimes a really long time. They don't always buy something, but they often just stop and take it in. And just to be able to witness that, as opposed to being in a studio wondering why you're doing it, it's just a very hands-on experience, which I love.
Very cool. All right, let's go on to this one, which is called Cosmic Witness, and this is a 20 by 20. And actually, this painting is going to be in the upcoming Union of Maine Visual Artists Dark Skies exhibit at Waterfall Arts in January. That's going to be a big show. Anyway, so did you witness the total eclipse in Maine earlier this year, and was that an inspiration for this particular painting?
Indeed, it was, yes. You'll hear more about the first eclipse that I saw later. That was in Wyoming. So as soon as we got home from that trip, we started planning, okay, when's the next eclipse? So, wow, it's going to go through Maine. And so we went to Jackman, and we went up the night before and got to experience another one.
Smart, because the traffic was nuts. Did any of y'all see the totality of the eclipse? Yeah, that was really amazing. So where was the location of this particular painting?
So that's in Jackman.
Okay, yeah. That is, okay.
Yeah, so it was 3 hours to get there and 6 hours to get home.
Yeah, sounds about right. And is there any significance to the glowing trees?
Yes, well, one of the things I try to do is have the painting look somewhat like how it felt. And obviously the trees weren't glowing, but everything else was. And so when I was making the painting, I step away, I just keep stepping away and trying to get a sense for what's going to make it look like how it felt. And I was just playing around with the idea of doing those glowing trees, and I liked it, and I was, okay, I'm going to add more. I'm just going to keep going with that. And that's my favorite part of the painting.
Yeah, me too. Okay, this is Light on the Falls. This is an 18 by 18, and this one is also in the lobby. And one thing I noticed about your paintings is a lot of them have water in them. So do you have any tricks for painting still and moving water?
I do.
Do tell.
Oh, yes. Well, I came up with a metaphor. I've almost always cut my own hair and my husband's hair, and when my kids were little, their hair. And one of the things that I learned about cutting hair is it's much easier to cut curly hair than straight hair. So painting still water is like cutting straight hair. If you make a mistake, it's going to show. So you have to, I don't do a lot of painting still water because it just doesn't fit with my whole vibe. And thankfully, 3 out of 4 of the members of my family have curly hair, so I'm much more comfortable with that. So with this, it's there. Do you remember the painting where during the little intro where the water was reflected and it was so busy? We had to take a photograph of the top half of the painting. Tim printed it and had to reverse it because when you're looking at something in a reflection, it's reversed. And my simple brain just couldn't do that. So Tim finally said, I tell you what I'm going to do. And then I was able to just look at that and reproduce it. But that's just way too tedious for me. So painting moving water, all you have to do is just stare at the photograph or just look at other paintings, and you see there's so much color everywhere you look, but in water in particular. So I just stare, and just try to tunnel into it and figure out what colors are there, and you just do brush strokes, and it's much more forgiving. And I'd never done a waterfall, but that was pretty easy. It's just a very, very pale blue-white.
Yeah.
It went very quickly. I'd put no paint underneath it, and then I just...
Yeah, and the lower area down closest to the foreground is very dark.
Yes, it was probably black in the photo, but I didn't want it to be black. So
yeah.
I added some blue.
Okay. All right, so this is where the light rests. This is a little bit larger. It's 20 by 16. And you have mentioned that Maine is your chosen state. So what drew you to Midcoast, Maine?
I love this story. So I grew up in Massachusetts, suburban Massachusetts, and went to college in Worcester, and was a French major. So I went to Paris the second semester of my junior year. And while I was in Paris, I knew that I couldn't possibly go home to Hingham for that summer. So I was writing to a friend, and we said, let's go to Maine. Neither of us had ever been to Maine, but we just thought that would be so fun. It's random what you do when you're in your 20s. So we had a friend that was summering every year in Ogunquit, and then Bush was president, so we knew what Kennebunkport was on the coast of Maine, and my brother had rebuilt the steeple of a church in Camden. So those were our 3 spots, one day in each, and we'll pick our favorite. And when we got to Camden, it was like 5, 6 o'clock, and the harbor was just glass and all the boats, and it was perfect. So we were like, okay, I guess we're gonna stay here. And I really fell in love with Maine right away. So
yeah, it's such a beautiful area.
And I mean, how many times when you're out walking did the people say to you, we are so lucky to live here?
Well, that's what I think of when I look at this painting, actually. It's just like, I say to my husband a lot, people come from all over the world to see something like this, and we just live here.
We see it every day.
Yeah. So let's see. Do you have a favorite Maine nature spot that inspires you to paint? You'd mentioned that one.
Yeah, I love Washington County, way down east, and I'm now trying to go to Baxter more. 20 years ago, I hiked Katahdin a couple of times, but at that point I wasn't painting. So now I'm going kind of with the artist in mind. Everybody's got to paint Katahdin eventually. You just got to do it.
Got to do it.
So that's coming.
All right. So this one is called To Bless the Space Between Us. It's a 20 by 20, and it is also in the lobby. When I looked at this, the question that came to my mind was that woods can be very complicated to paint because there's always so much going on. You've got branches, leaves, bushes, understory, you name it, it's all going on. So how do you approach painting wood specifically?
Yes, and I do it a lot, don't I?
Yeah.
I've loved trees ever since I was a little kid. I grew up with 5 brothers and was always in trees. So I definitely am drawn to trees. And I feel really grateful that painting trees for the last 20 years has taught me how much color is in a tree. There's I mean, I probably am putting 12 colors in the trees that I paint. And one of the things I didn't say at the beginning was that I only paint in the winter, and I just, to make things simple for me, I think, all right, I'm going to try to do one painting each month. I've got 6 months. And so I can really take my time and enjoy the process. And so, as I'm, as I said, I start off with that really light layer, and then just slowly building up the layers of color. And I'm just looking to have the painting come off the canvas as much as possible to glow. So I simplify. I see the parts of the trees. In this case, that was from a photograph in Washington County. That's in Truscott, Maine. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot more going on in the photograph. It's not a beautiful photograph, but it was just this grove of poplar, and I loved the light on it that day we were there. So that's what I was going by, mostly from memory, and I just kept layering on. I think that evergreens are a little more challenging for me.
But I love the one on the right.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, that stands out to me.
Okay.
And the title, "To Bless the Space Between Us," is there a backstory with that one?
Oh, yeah.
I figured with a title like that.
That is a book by John O'Donoghue, an Irish poet and philosopher. And I have a brother that's very, very artistic, but has some challenges. And so my husband and I helped him move to Maine. He was in Somerville, Mass. So we helped him move up to Maine a year ago. And it opened up some work, the inner work I had to do around that relationship. And so I wasn't sure how to proceed, but I don't have as many kind of angst-filled times as I did when I first started painting, but there are times when there is something I need to chew on. And so I saw the title of that book, and I just knew instantly, oh, that's the energy I want to give to this relationship. We're separate, but we're blessing the space between us. So as I made that painting, it's almost like putting these layers of the colors, like there's a lot of yellow and pink, and those are soft, warm colors. And it was like creating a sheath around me and around him, and the space in between. I love how the branches kind of reach out to each other, but that the trees are separate, and the light is soft, and it really helped me to kind of proceed in that relationship. So it's a very handy way of kind of working through something. You know what your intention is in life, but often when people are challenging, you don't necessarily know how to show up. So that's that.
Very interesting. Okay. This is When the Shadbush Sings. This is a 12 by 12. And I had to look up what shadbushes were all about because I didn't know. And so if you don't know, they have these beautiful white blooms in mid-May, and they are food for queen bumblebees, of all beings. And it's named after the shadfish because they come up and return to the rivers in mid-May. And then you may have also heard of it called serviceberry. And I always wondered why serviceberry. And it turns out that in Maine, people had to wait until mid-May to have memorial services for loved ones because that's when the ground was soft enough to dig a grave. So this shadbush has a lot of associations, I guess, doesn't it?
Yes.
And so was there a story behind this painting?
Right. The story behind this painting is very simple. It was February, and a certain redhead gardener was longing for spring. So there was no complex emotion going on other than that. My husband has a great term for that end of February, March time. He calls it farch. But I didn't call the painting farch.
Probably better. I think When the Shadbush Sings sounds a lot more poetic.
Yeah, and the Latin name is Amelanchier, and that's I'm looking, it's on the left, blooming. And just, it's such a wonderful sign of spring to me when that blooms.
Yeah, And so many of your paintings are on the medium to smaller side. So have you always painted this size, and why?
Right. Well, when I first started to paint, I had no idea what I was doing, and I think I got a book at the library written by a mom. Could relate to that because I had 2 little kids, and she said she just painted 5 by 5 canvases because she could do it in one studio session. So the first painting I ever made was 5 by 5. It was one pair, and then I made another one, and then I thought, okay, I think I can get a little bigger. So I got an 8 by 10 canvas. I would just buy the canvases one at a time, and then I did another pair, but on a table, and then just inched my way into 10 by 10, and then finally, when I was feeling ready, I bought a bunch of 12 by 12s, and that was when I studied the chakras, which are the energy centers that you mentioned, and I liked 12 by 12, and I stuck with that for a while. But then eventually, my husband said, "I really think you should try to paint something bigger." So I think I jumped all the way to 20 by 20 from 12 by 12, and I loved it. I really loved making the bigger paintings. I've also done some 16 by 20, and at dinner we were talking about this. I was like, all right, I need to make something a little bigger, but
Yeah, scale back the gardens. And
yeah.
Let the inner garden grow.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, let's move along to, this is called Wildflower Moon. This is a 12 by 12. And I looked up the wildflower moon, and that is, it occurs in May, in case you were wondering. So this is definitely a nighttime image. And do you find depicting nighttime images to be a challenge? And what advice would you offer to those who are drawn to painting outdoor night scenes?
Yes. Well, do you remember in the little video at the beginning, there was a picture of a woman going up the road with the cloud formation and a moon. So when I was 49, I had a pretty serious midlife crisis, mostly anxiety. And one night I work with elderly people, so I know about this thing called sundowning. So if you're in a home where there's a lot of older people, as the sun goes down, everybody starts getting a little anxious. So I knew about that, and I thought, oh man, what am I going to do? And for some reason, one night I just went outside and I went for a walk in the dark, and I loved it. It felt so good. So I started doing that through that whole period. I often would walk at night, and in the beginning I would have a headlamp and then turn that off. No, I wanted to be in the dark. So that was the first night painting I made, I think. And I'm sure I make at least 1 or 2 a year out of my 6 paintings, because who wouldn't love a full moon? And oh, that's right. Another kind of piece of it is that when I was still in that phase, and we ended up hosting a woman who was a storyteller. She was going to give a workshop at the Waldorf School. And I said to her, I'm just really, really anxious. What do you recommend? Because she worked with people that have mental illness. And she said, just put something on the painting, dear, that makes you feel safe. And so instantly I knew when I started it was going to be a moon. So many, many moons in my paintings that I never get. So as long as you have a light source and maybe some water to reflect that light source, the painting won't be too dark. And I make a lot of skies that just have a lot going on. You'll see that later too. And it's I'm going to use the word fun. It's really enjoyable to see how many colors you can put in a night sky. Because obviously it doesn't really look like that unless you're using a slow exposure photography. But when you're making the painting, you can put whatever colors you want in there.
Is there any significance to the 2 little people down there hanging out at the beach?
No, I think they weren't there, and then it felt like they needed to be there, so I added them. Yeah. And the woman who bought that painting, it was really neat. She saw it, and I think it was just, she works with, I think she's a therapist, and I loved that she wanted that painting. I think she has it hanging in her office. So
Yeah.
it's a happy painting.
Yeah, reassuring, isn't
Yes.
it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then we come to this one, which is Song of the Hermit Thrush, which is a 12 by 12. And I looked up hermit thrushes. They are reclusive birds hanging out in northern forest in the summer, and you would be most likely to hear them sing in June. So I love the detail of this one. How long did it take you to paint this painting?
Yeah, that one was probably a month. Most of them take about a month, which is really, 8 times 4, like maybe 30 hours or so of actual painting time. And that was from a photograph that I took in right near Sugarloaf. I have a friend that has a place out there, and sometimes we go and hike there. And it was just I loved the way the light in the photograph, the way the light was lighting up the trees. And I don't think the photograph had a stream in it, so I added that. Again, to brighten it up. Water does that. Yeah. And I think you said there's a lot of detail.
Yeah, there's a lot of detail in this one, which I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So what type of brushes do you use for these more detailed nature paintings?
Yeah, I don't use very many big, large brushes. I use a lot of pretty small brushes, and I'm not a big technical person, so I think that Simmons is the brand, but it's often just like whatever's the little set that's cheapest at Rockport Blueprint. Just lots of tiny little brush strokes. I developed a frozen shoulder when I first started painting way back in the day. And so one of the cool things that happened after a very big struggle was finally being so frustrated that I passed the brush to my left hand. And the first painting I made after the frozen shoulder was all left-handed. And from there, I was trying to access the right side of my brain, and I was trying to do it using my powerful left brain, and it just wasn't happening. And all I had to do was hold the brush in my left hand, and then that was when I started accessing my intuition more. So I now paint with 2 hands, just because the right hand still obviously can put a lot more control and detail. But just moving the left hand, it helps keep my shoulder calm, and I think it helps me stay in the intuitive place. So there's a trick for you.
Yeah, the left-right hemisphere.
Yes,
That's great.
Yeah.
And do you have a favorite kind of paint that you use, or?
Well, I love Winsor Newton paints in terms of the color that they have, but because it takes me so long to go through a tube, and they tend to dry out for me. And so more for environmental reasons, I started using Liquitex, because those tend to last a lot longer. And now I'm also exploring golden.
Yeah, I love golden, actually.
Yeah, I think I'll probably use more and more golden.
And are you using the liquid ones, or are you using the kind in the tube?
Tubes.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And I don't get real big ones.
Yeah.
I don't really use a ton. Even though I layer a lot of colors, I don't really go through a lot of paint.
Okay. Now this one, the title is Traveler, There Is No Road. This is a 12 by 12. It's in the lobby, and this is how I actually kind of became acquainted with Maureen, because somehow, and I don't even remember when, I bought one of your cards of this. So while I was like, who am I going to interview? And then I found that as I was cleaning out. It was very cool.
I love
so you
that
never
story.
know.
Yeah.
You never know where your artwork into whose hands it will fall.
Yes. That's great.
But talk to us about the title of this painting.
Yeah, well, so we haven't mentioned it yet, but I had breast cancer in 2012, so 12 years ago. And while I was going through my active treatment, someone sent me this card. And it was a poem called Traveler, There Is No Road. And it's been on I have a bulletin board in my studio, so it's been on the bulletin board ever since then. And I reread it every year. And so the pandemic happened, and I went through a phase, I think for an entire winter, where maybe it was only half of the winter. I guess it was like November, December passed, and I just could not get myself to paint. I was like, what's the point? It was not happening. And then I listened to an interview with the photographer Sig Harvey. My daughter models for her, and I'm very familiar with her work, and she's just this bubbling fountain of enthusiasm for everything. And during the pandemic, she did this project where she would shine her photographs on the side of a building in Rockport. So you'd be driving home and at 5 o'clock, and it's dark because it's winter, and then there'd be this photograph that was there. She does kind of like magical realism, and it would just blow your mind. The color would be so bright. And so right after that, I listened to an interview with her, and she was saying, "We need beauty now more than ever." And I was like, she's right. I need to make another painting. And I went into my studio, and this is from a photograph that my daughter took of me. My daughter lived in Hawaii 2 different winters, working on farms there as a volunteer. And so we went to visit her, and we went on this crazy hike in the jungle. And she took just a Polaroid of me and gave it to me for Christmas. And so I had the title, I had the painting, the photo to work from. And I'm not going to read the whole poem, it's very short, but it's just, "Traveler, the road is your footprints, nothing more. Traveler, there is no road. The road is made by walking."
Oh.
So it's a lot, and I'm studying Spanish now, so it's also beautiful in its native language. Caminante, no hay camino.
It's very moving.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was so. The image or the metaphor I'm going to use in making this painting, it was like I was a dry sponge, and every brush stroke rehydrated me, so that by the end, I was a person again that felt normal, and it was a gift.
See that little owl up in there?
Yeah.
Is there a significance to that?
Yes. Well, I feel like the owls found me when I found Maine. So barred owls are everywhere that we've lived. We've had barred owls. So I have a lot of barred owls in my paintings. So it's just a talisman. Whenever, especially when I was going through that anxious period, they often call to each other late at night or in the middle of the night, and sleep with the windows open. You hear them, and it's just like, you're gonna be all right. I love their calls so much.
They're magical.
They really are. Yeah.
Soak that one in for a minute. I'll give you a second to look at it, and then we're gonna shift gears and go to Wyoming. Traveler, there is no road. Okay. Now, this is called Beholding the Source. This is a 20 by 16, and this is definitely from the Wyoming series. So what exactly motivated you to go to Wyoming, and how long were you there each time you went?
Right. Okay, true confession. I did not want to go to Wyoming. But my husband came to me and our 2 grown kids, they were both in their 20s, and he said, with his big smile on his face, "Well, I'm going to be 60 this summer, and there's going to be an eclipse going through the Wind River Mountains, and we could go on a hike together." So the kids were totally on board right away, and I was not, but I didn't want to miss it, so I had to go. And I was very serious about my training. I guess what it was is I didn't believe I could carry a pack in the wilderness sleep on the ground. There was just so many things about it that I had never done before and didn't think that I was capable of doing. So I had to learn how to do it. And the first hike was really, really hard. It was painfully hard, meaning when we came back, that's also in the little video at the beginning, I was very sad about myself, like, God, you really couldn't do that. What is wrong with you? You're just, really kind of beating myself up. But I had learned from writing the book after I had cancer that the writing would help me. So I started writing, just telling the story of the hike. And then, of course, I started making paintings that helped me also process it. And within a year of making the first 6 or 7 paintings, I was starting to think, wow, I think I want to go back. And I was so surprised that that's what rose up. But I approached him and I said, okay, I want to go back, but I want to do it on my terms. And so we're going to have my friends there, not the kids, because they were like, running way ahead of us. There's young people have so much more energy. So anyway, so we invited some really dear friends, and he promised to keep the days, not long mileage days, and because I really wanted to just sit and look at the beauty. I wanted to take it in. And the second trip was completely different than the first. I loved it. I also learned that if you take a Benadryl before you go to bed, even if you're sleeping on hard ground, I could sleep. Because I barely slept the first hike. It was, I'd fall asleep at like 4 in the morning or something. So it was totally different. And then we went back. I think we've gone 5 times. I've actually lost track.
So each time you
time,
hike,
yeah,
and
it's like
sleep
a
out.
7-day or 8-day, 7-night trip, and Tim does carry some of my weight, so that I'm good for about 22 pounds or so, and much more than that I can't do. So he'll carry like 40. He carries the tent. Yeah.
So you're basically absorbing the landscape and taking pictures, and then when you get back, you kind of...
That's when I do the paintings.
Okay.
Yeah. And I would continue to paint Wyoming, but it kind of feels like, I live here, I want to paint here. But the Wyoming paintings are really fun to do. It's just drop dead gorgeous there, obviously, you can tell. Then this place is Peak Lake. It's at 11,000 feet. And it's, that picture was taken by Tim, or whatever, the painting is made from a photograph that Tim took of a friend of his. He went on the same hike that we did later together. And I said, I want to go to that place. And so we did, and everyone got their picture on the rock. And being in the wilderness, especially out there, it's so, even though there's a lot of wind in the Wind River Mountains, there's a lot of noise, but the stillness that you experience when you're in a wild place, especially at the altitude, I think that's part of it. It just comes into you, and then you have it the whole rest of the year. You just have this spaciousness in you that is hugely impactful, and I'm so, so grateful that I've had that experience.
Yeah, how many of you in the audience have been to Wyoming or Colorado? Yeah. So if you've been there, it's really true. The air is very thin, and you can actually whisper and hear very far away. It's a whole other world. There's very many magical things about Maine, but Wyoming is something else. You feel like you're on the moon, a little bit.
Yeah, Tim, we call it the lunar landscape,
Yeah.
to get above tree line.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's move along to Summit Meadow. And I am particularly drawn to your landscape paintings that appear mostly realistic, but with a notable twist. So in this case, the daisies seem to have a certain glow to them, and I'm wondering if you set out to paint a magical meadow, or did the magical effect on this one happen subconsciously?
Right. So I just think people might be interested. The Latin name of that flower is arnica.
Oh, okay.
Which is the same arnica that so it's a wild flower, and there are tons of them in the Wind Rivers. I'm sure they're all over Colorado and the other parts of Wyoming too. But you just see so many of them, and so many interesting butterflies and other creatures on them that are unfamiliar as someone that didn't grow up in Wyoming. So I took a lot of photographs and videos of groups of those flowers. And and this painting is actually not like that part of the painting is from the lower part with the arnica is from a photograph that I took in Wyoming. But the rest of the painting is just kind of like, I don't know, I think of it like Sound of Music Meadow, just like the perfect alpine meadow. And so it is very much an imagined place. People always want to know, where is that so I can go? It's like,
well, yeah, you know, what I thought when I saw it was that there's some Maine in that meadow. That's where my brain went, and
okay.
I've just been recently digesting the new John Moore book, Portals, and he says sometimes he imports Maine light into his Philadelphia paintings, and I was like, you know, that sort of has a little bit of Maine in it to me.
I love to hear that. Yeah. It just happens. That many things that I paint just happen. Can't really explain why. It just comes out.
So you've carried some of the Wyoming air with you, that interesting
Yes.
emptying out thin air. Is there anything else that Wyoming kind of changed you in a way that you see things differently now as an artist or otherwise?
Most of the changes are more inner, not so much as a painter, other than what I said in the little intro, that I'm very comfortable painting mountains now. And there's a pass that we've done twice called Cube Rock Pass that is otherworldly to me. It's really difficult, and you use poles when you hike in the mountains, but when you're hiking up a pass like this, you just have to put your poles, make them small, and tuck them in your pack, and just go up with your hands. So you're, kind of scaling these enormous rocks, and so you're really close to them, and you're touching them. And both times I've done it, it's been raining, not badly, but kind of in a nice way. And so the rocks are more beautiful when they're wet, and there's so much color in the rocks, and you're so close to them, and you're touching them. It's again not an experience I've had so much in Maine. So that would be, another big. I don't know how that's affected me, other than just being a little braver about doing things.
Sounds
kind
like
of a wimp. I grew up with 5 brothers, and that was my nickname in childhood. Well, number 5 out of 6, and the number 6 was this huge football player, so definitely the smallest. So I think maybe I've shed the wimp nickname now that I've done all this hiking in Wyoming.
You need a new nickname.
Yeah, my doctor calls me badass. That was the first time anybody has ever called me badass. And I was like, really? I'm going to take that home with me.
Okay, this one's called Green River Morning. It's 20 by 16. And you had mentioned in the video that you love to layer colors into a harmonious whole. So can you talk about your process with color that gets you to this amazing result?
Yes. Well, as I've said, it's just time.
Yeah.
Layer after layer after layer. And I just step away, and I just keep going until it pops. And that is 2 of the hikes we've done. We start at a place called the Green River Lakes Trailhead. And the Green River is that color. It's from glacial sediment that comes down from way up high. And the whole first day, I think my husband called it the gateway drug for the Wind Rivers, because we've brought 2 different groups there, and Tim's brought others, and that's the first day that you're hiking. You're going along that river, and just like, yeah. So you have to do it justice if you're going to make a painting of it.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like this one did, and the log was there. That is actually exactly where the log was. But again, as a photographer, you can set up when you're taking photographs, like, okay, I'm going to get it so the log is pointing in the right direction.
Right. So your eye keeps moving the right way,
yeah,
right?
takes you right through.
Yeah. Okay. All right. This is called Give It to the Wind. This is a smaller one. It's 12 by 12. And you've said you are a storyteller, using all of the artist tools to make an image that sparks an inner response. So what prompted this image and its title?
Yes. So I ever since I was a kid, we had one magazine that we got, and it was National Geographic, and I still get that magazine. And so there's still amazing photographs in it. So the start of this painting came from a National Geographic photograph with 2 young, I would say they were 10-year-old girls, and they were in a foreign country. I think it might have been Afghanistan, and they're in a field, and they had their hands up, and I loved the gesture. I love gesture, movement in a still painting to somehow show that there's movement. So it captivated me the way this young woman or girl had her arms. So I thought, well, I'm going to start with her. And then the next thing you know, she was a middle-aged woman.
Self-portrait.
Yeah. And she was on a beach instead of in a field. And then that sky just felt like the right sky that it wasn't in the photograph. And this is, I would say, one of the first paintings that I did where I instantly knew, oh, this is going to be a good card. And I brought it to Rockport Blueprint, carries my cards, and I got a call from my friend who's the card buyer, and she said, we've sold out of that card already, you need to bring some more. I thought, yeah, there's a lot of people that need that card.
Yeah.
Because Give It to the Wind. I love titling my paintings too. It's really fun. So that's that.
This one's called Constellation of Kindness. This is also a 12 by 12. And I love the title. What inspired this one?
Yes. So as I mentioned a minute ago, I went through active treatment for breast cancer 12 years ago. And my experience, I feel, was very special. I had some life-changing experiences that were part of it. And mostly, I mean, of course, there were very difficult things about it, but so much of the experience really was heart-opening. And I had this long-suffering mother who I had trouble with. We'll just keep it at that. But she, a few years before I was diagnosed, she was running up the steps to go to church, and she fell really badly and broke a collarbone in her wrist, and she couldn't do anything. And because she'd been part of this church for 40 years, every night a meal was dropped off. And I remember talking to her during that period, and she was like a different person. She was so happy, and she'd had this terrible accident. She couldn't believe how nice it was to have people drop off meals and bring stuff, and even her husband was being nice. My dad. So when I was diagnosed, I got that, I had that memory like, oh, okay, this is my time to receive, because I'm a giver. So many of us are, and so I let myself receive everything that came my way. Sure, you want to give me that? Sure, I'll take that. Yes, thank you. And it changes you when you do that. And it's hard to do. I remember one day where I just thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to repay all of this. I'm going to have to be even nicer and more giving. And then this other side of me that was like in this receiving mode was like, no, you won't. Just take it. It's okay. And so when I finished the active treatment, I knew that that was all going to come to a close, and that I would probably have a depression then. And so I thought, oh, I need to tell this story, and I need to process it. So I started writing the individual stories, and I had already made a bunch of paintings, but then I made a lot more. And this is one of the last paintings in the book. And it's just, you can see the 4 people in the center. That's me and my husband and our 2 kids, and then all the people around them. And in the book, it's something like, I had always wanted to believe in that constellation, and looking up and seeing it, I knew that it existed. Something, more poetic than that. But it was a really fun painting to make. It almost looks like you're in the desert or something, And there were totally different colors, and they didn't work, so I had to redo it. And the second time it came together, and
Well, the swirl kind of looks like DNA.
Yes.
Doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's move on to the last one so that we have some time for questions. So this one here is called Nearer the Far Away. It's a 20 by 20. And to me, your paintings just really have a healing quality about them, which is unsurprising. So in the video, you had mentioned that bringing difficult scenes into focus allowed me to recast them in a kinder light. Turning an angst-filled night into a scene like this was like a superpower that let me find beauty in the darkest place. So you've been painting now for 18 years. And when and how did you discover this superpower, this ability to turn difficult experiences into paintings like this?
Well, I would say it happened when I was painting the chakras. And I mentioned earlier the storyteller that said, put something on the canvas that makes you feel safe. You can paint over it if you want, but just start with that. So I made this, it was the 5th chakra, which is the chakra that describes you kind of what you give to the world, your expression, your creative expression, or your vocal expression to the world. And so I started with the moon, and the moon stayed, and then the painting also has a woman. There's a woman in every single one of the paintings, and like there's like these little round huts that I guess people say there look like little altars in Italy or Mexico, depending on who is remarking on that. But I made this painting, and towards the very end, it was winter, and it was a really foggy day, and so kind of ethereal light outside of my studio. And I was so grateful to have, because I had just finished this really difficult period. And I was so grateful to have made that painting. It was really beautiful to me. And I felt, I don't know, it was like I was at the altar of the painting or something, but I felt like I was inside the painting. It was so protective. And so that was like the first experience I had that taught me that I could do this whenever I needed to. And of course, there were more times to come going through the cancer and everything. Yeah. But now it's I've painted for almost 20 years, so all I have to do is enter my studio, and I have this music. I've listened to the same Pandora station for the entire 18 years because I just start hearing that music. It's called Indian Vibes, and it's all this very soothing music. And of course, they add new songs every year. So, and I just like, okay, even if I didn't paint, if I just stood there and stared at a blank canvas, I would start feeling better, I'm sure. But it's just a very soothing, healing thing. And of course, now that we're doing so much brain research, we understand that color actually does change the vibrations and the molecules.
My mom's always said too, no matter how you feel when you go into the studio, usually when you come out, you feel a lot better. So if you have some things that you get your brain used to doing, it just starts to happen for you. It's really cool.
As a painter, this too.
Yeah.
Yes.
So any future plans that you want to share before we go to Q&A?
Well, I'm in a bit of a transition right now. So all I know is I'm going to be painting some Baxter paintings this winter, and Maine paintings, and got the UMVA show in January, which just has that one painting of the eclipse. And then I had a show in August of this past year, and I was given a couple of opportunities from that I'm thinking about.
Great.
I can't really talk about them yet, but so I'm not sure. But I do have a new store in Damascotta that I got for this. So if you want to go and find the cards, they're at Gifts at 123. And I have some giclée prints there too.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, Maureen, it's been such a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
And if any of y'all have some questions, just raise your hand and we'll try to get to. Sure.
I have a severe hearing problem, so I might have missed something, and I want to ask the question. Have you published a book
Yes.
of your
Yes.
works?
Yes, so it's right over there. The book is more about
great.
my breast cancer story.
Because if you
Yeah.
had- I was going to say you should. I love your work. It is fabulous.
Thank you.
Yeah, when we conclude the Q&A, then if you would like to pick up a book, any donation you'd like to make will go to the theater. So, yeah.
This has been a joy.
Oh, good. Thank you. It's been so much fun. I really appreciate having had this opportunity. Emily has really made the last couple of weeks. Everybody else is in stress around the election, and I'm just reading all about creativity and thinking about all they've done, and it's just been a really happy time. So
Good.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I think of the wildflower moon, and you had said how you, the water, the whites were blues, and was there actual white from a tube in that moon, or is it the way the sky works that just makes it so white?
Oh,
Let
no,
me
I'm
just,
sure.
let me
Yeah.
just, you're asking, just so everybody can hear, because, so you're asking about whether the moon was truly white? Is that what you were, yeah, okay, sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, nothing is ever truly white in any of my paintings, but there's even in a moon that looks, when you're looking at it, it might look white. There's yellow, there's a little pink, there might be some purple, but it's very, very pale, but just to make it more interesting. So I don't do flat color. I'm not an Alex Katz painter who just has these flat bands of color. I'm layering a lot, but mostly white in that moon, yes.
Di.
I think that of all the lectures that I've heard artists speak, amazing artists, yours was the most enjoyable. It was so you don't have to know about art to appreciate or look at or imagine your images. Some artists paint things I have no clue what they're painting, but everybody could pick one and relate to it. And your storytelling is magnificent.
Oh.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
Oops.
I think
not
everybody
supposed to
heard
hit
that,
the-
right? She was saying that this has been a very enjoyable episode because of the nature of the work and the storytelling of Maureen. So, thank you.
Good.
Yay. All right. Yes.
Oh, is that Janet? Oh my gosh, hi.
I'm just curious, Maureen's a grandmother, if having grandchildren has influenced how you work and what you do.
Not yet.
If having grandchildren has influenced your work.
Right.
Yeah.
It hasn't yet, but I wouldn't be surprised. They're still little. I have two granddaughters. One is almost 2 and one is 3.5. And I can see that day could be coming.
All right. Well, there are books over here for you to check out, and there's
Yeah, Again, kudos to my graphic designer husband, who I have the most wonderful business card you've ever seen, which you can put up on your refrigerator. It's like a little painting with a nice quote, and then all the info is on the back. And so everybody should take one of those home if you want a pretty painting for your refrigerator.